Okay, what's up, everyone? This is Jordan, obviously from the Undergraduate Survival Guide. Today we have a good international friend of mine in Rachel. How have you been out there in America?
It's been good. It's been a weird time for sure. Coming home from school pretty suddenly and then just everything getting shut down, but take it day by day.
That's the only way to do it, man. You know, we actually had, I don't know if you've seen the news recently, but we have 3 more weeks in lockdown in the UK.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, in the US it's so big that it's kind of hard to mandate an official rule for everyone. So, there's the federal government that's overseeing the whole US that's saying something. But just for example, Texas, the governor of Texas decided that Texas would reopen next week. So it's interesting to see what all the different places are deciding to do.
Wow. Is it, I mean, I feel like this is the typical UK belief, but is it true that Texas is the worst?
Texans are the worst in what sense?
Just all round, like like gun laws, I know are quite crazy there. I know you guys are quite you hate electric cars. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the worst is kind of subjective. Like, if you're all for your gun rights and, liberty for the people and like do whatever you want, then Texas is a great place to be. But yeah, generally it does lean a bit more conservative.
That's crazy. Do you feel like because obviously you live in Texas, but you went to uni in California,
Hmm.
is because my image of America is very much like is comparable to a continent, and then your states are comparable to like countries within that. Is
Hmm.
that kind of the impression you get when you're traveling around if you do much out of state travel?
Um, yeah, I guess you could compare it to that because the US is pretty big. And every state, has its own laws and well, not necessarily all of its own laws, but has, jurisdiction over some specific laws and different states are known for different things. I guess the only difference would be that it's really easy to travel between states. Like there's rarely ever any like checkpoints or anything like that. Like you wouldn't need a passport. So that's the only difference I would say between like calling them countries or just different states.
Mm, I guess that makes sense. How did you find your year in Europe?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I attend a small liberal arts college in California called Pitzer, and so our student body has about 1,000 people. So going to Bristol and taking the computer science classes where it was like 300 people per lecture, and like people don't even really show up, or they might not show up because everything's online. It was a super different experience, but I'm glad I got to have it.
That's fascinating. Like I remember when you first told me that you don't really have big lectures like that, and the blue like for me, I feel like I'd benefit a lot from smaller classes because you actually get to learn things and you're more pressure to show up. Like, did you ever feel kind of I don't want to say isolated, but almost like there's no external pressure making you do things?
Yeah, I definitely felt like it was a lot more you had to self motivate. At least like when the classes are small, I feel like you do have a connection with your professor. And I know professors sometimes, if kids don't show up to class, they'll email the kids and be like, "Oh, just want to check in that everything's okay." And so it definitely makes you feel more motivated to like at least be there for the professor, so that they're not staring at a two-person class or whatever. So I think it definitely does make a difference in, your motivation and also just engagement in general with your classes.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Because for me, like if I miss a lecture, you would never hear anything, and then
Right.
it's
Yeah.
easy to feel like you have two separate lives in a sense.
Yeah.
Do you feel? I mean, you were here for a semester.
Mhm.
Like, would you have preferred to do a whole year?
Um, I mean, I think a lot of the fun aspect of being abroad was kind of getting to do a lot of the traveling and not necessarily focusing on the schoolwork so much. Um, I did like my classes for sure. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think it depends on what I would be looking for because I think I do prefer having smaller classes and like getting to know the other students in the class and the professor really well. Um, So if I were to spend another semester and just focus on my studies, I'd probably rather be back in the US. But as far as getting to travel around and stuff, like Europe is very convenient.
Mm, yeah, that's true. Like traveling between European countries is so easy and so much fun, I've heard.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Like, I don't know. I was just thinking about how I had to drive home from California to Texas, and that took me like 23 hours of driving. Um, so yeah, and then like, Europe, you're an hour flight and you're in a different country or whatever.
Yeah, that anything more than like an hour drive is unheard of, I feel like,
Yeah, for
in this
sure.
part of the world. What's the you learn to drive at 16, right? Well, you can get a license at 16.
Yeah, so you can, I think, yeah, you think you can get your license at 16. It actually differs between state, like when you can get your permit and when you can get your license, but I got mine at 16.
That's so crazy. Because I guess that kind of is some sort of proof of the way, the way things are in America. Whereas, I mean, you always see like the road trip culture. Um, you have big, wide roads like designed for driving around compared to Europe, where it's all these narrow lanes and back streets.
Yeah, I definitely think it has to do with like the fact that in a lot of US states there isn't great public transportation and things are pretty just spread out in general. Um, and I think maybe another thing might be that our drinking age is 21 and yours is 18, right? So um, if they have people driving and drinking at a younger age, I don't know, I think they saw some issues with that because it was 18 for a while in the US and then they changed it. Um, yeah.
I feel like 21 is ridiculous though. I mean, you can do basically anything else when you're 19, 18, apart from drink.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I think it's a very interesting debate because like if you look at the science, right? Like your brain isn't even fully developed until you're like 24 or something like that. Um, but at the same time having these laws doesn't really prevent anyone from drinking. People just might be more irresponsible about it. So definitely a lot of parts to the argument, I think.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the whole what's the terminology for it? Frat party culture in colleges kind of contradicts that. How
Yeah.
did you find like uni in America before you came to Bristol or
Um,
college?
Yeah, so I basically didn't I never went to a school that had any kind of Greek life. I kind of intentionally avoided it. I just felt like it wasn't really great for fostering like an inclusive community. So I actually started college in rural Maine at Colby College, which is up in the New England area, kind of closest to New York. I spent a year there. It was really, really cold, so I left, and then I moved to Southern California to Pitzer, and I really, really enjoyed it for sure. Pitzer is a part of this undergraduate college consortium, which I think is really, really unique in that Pitzer is its own school of about 1,000 students, but within a mile radius, there's 4 other colleges. And so you can actually take classes and major at any of the other schools. So, for example, Pitzer doesn't have a computer science major, but Pomona, one of the other schools in the consortium, has computer science. So I'm
Mm.
taking all of my classes at Pomona um, while still being a Pitzer student. So I think what makes that setup unique is that you can have the small, like kind of intimate class size, but you have the resources of a university that's like roughly 9,000 people with all the 5 colleges combined.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Uh, Bristol is, I think, 18,000, but I can
Yeah.
imagine like, yeah, I feel that's a mid-size, that's a good size uni.
Hmm.
That's so
Yeah.
wild. Like, did you interact much with people from the other like colleges, or are you very
Yeah.
much
No,
just in
I
your?
I feel like you can, if you don't want to interact with students from other colleges, you couldn't get away with it. But I think that's been one of the best parts of my experience is just like getting to meet students from the different colleges because each college kind of has a specialty. Like they're all liberal arts schools, but each college is kind of more known for something. So Pitzer is known for social justice work, stuff like that. There's a college known more for engineering and STEM. There's one that's an all women's college, one that's more known for economics and business. So it does attract different kinds of people. So, getting to have all these different kinds of people in one place I think it makes it a very engaging place. There's always stuff going on.
Mm. Yeah, I can imagine that's quite cool. Especially how like, because I mean, in Bristol, we do have a similar thing with faculties, but you live with, random people from random degrees. I
Mm.
feel like having your own, like, I guess hotspots for like the engineers there and then the artists here, it makes it so much more free flowing, I feel like.
Yeah, yeah. So every school, it kind of, I feel like a good example would be if you think about like clubs. I think you guys call them societies. But like every school has some clubs that are only for that school, but there are also a lot of clubs that are for all five colleges. So that's a really great way to meet people. Like one of the ones I've been really involved with is an outdoor club. So people from all the five colleges can get together and like go hiking or go camping over the weekend.
That's sick. I wish
Yeah.
we had an outdoors in the UK.
I feel like the weather doesn't totally permit for that.
Yeah, it's funny how you say you left Maine because it was too cold, so you came to Bristol. Just
Hey, it was pretty nice. I came in the spring, so it's pretty nice.
That's true. Crazy. Do you feel like, because one thing that I want to say I'm envious of that the US do that we don't is how you do your first year of just like any subjects, and then you do your minor and major afterwards. Is that
Hmm.
something that you like haven't experienced the way we do it here? Is that something that you think is a like, do you back that even more now, or is it weird?
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's a great thing to have flexibility. So, like, the thing is that there are liberal arts colleges which allow you for your first 2 years to not declare a major. And then you can go to schools that you go in, like more like the UK system, and you're going to do engineering for 4 years or whatever. But I think liberal arts colleges are great because my first 2 years, I was a biology major and I was going to go to vet school. And I took all of the bio classes like organic chemistry, genetics, all that stuff. And then I decided my second year that I didn't want to go to vet school. And had I been in the UK system, I think it would have been a lot harder to transfer and change my mind. Um, but now I'm doing computer science and cognitive science, and I think it's a lot better fit for what I now think I want to do.
Mm. Yeah, that's definitely a good thing because you can transfer here, but you'd have to realize it very early. Otherwise, you pay money for extra years. I mean, I guess finances in America are different anyway. You got to pay for everything regardless. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I can see the advantages of that because I know a lot of friends who did a course for 1 year and said, "No, I want to switch," and then after 2 years they want to switch back, and then you got to pay all this money, and it's become so difficult to move around. But having that sort of flexibility sounds really cool.
Yeah, definitely.
How come you picked biology in the first place, and then what made you switch to computer science? Because I feel like they're two very, very different avenues.
Yeah, I would definitely say that I still really like biology. So I'm minoring in cognitive science, which is basically the study of the mind, and there are five different components. There's psychology, um, computer science, neuroscience, and philosophy. And yeah, so I feel like I still get to do some bio, but basically I saw computer science as an avenue into tech, and I see tech as kind of going to be affecting everything in the future. So I felt like it would give me a lot of options. So even if I go into tech, I feel like I could go into biotech if I wanted to and still be involved in that industry. While if I had gone to vet school, my only option would be would have been to be a vet.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's funny how because obviously studying in California is like very much the tech center of the world in many ways.
Mhm.
I mean, is it true that there are flying cars in California?
um, not that I know of. I do know that in New York City they have Uber with helicopters, so a helicopter can come and pick you up.
That's
um,
crazy.
and I think I've seen a couple self-driving cars in California, but not it's not common.
That's so wild. How far out? Because obviously California is a really long but like rectangular state. How far away were you from like I don't even know what the area is called, just like Silicon Valley, Palo Alto, all of
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So I'm in Southern California. I'm about an hour outside of LA. But I would say it'd probably take about 7 hours driving to get to San Francisco, Bay Area.
Wow.
Yeah. Big state.
That's so crazy. And then again, there's like no public transport, right?
Yeah, there is. You can get between LA and San Francisco. There's like one train that runs pretty frequently. Um, but it's faster to just drive.
That's so crazy. I mean, how would you guys survive if you couldn't drive everywhere? Like, I assume not all students can do that sort of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess it just kind of keeps people in one place more often. I think it does definitely vary by city. Like San Francisco is known for its really good public transportation. Same like New York. So like you definitely wouldn't even want a car there because it's just too expensive to pay for parking everywhere and stuff like that. But in a city like mine, San Antonio, there's really not a lot of public transportation at all. So you just kind of have to drive. And it's also very, very spread out.
Mm, that's interesting. I feel like in some capacity or another, you almost live I want to say, international student lifestyle, even in your own country. Because a lot of UK home students, like we go home, be it like every term or every other week, or I guess depends on how frequently you want to see your parents. But it seems like you haven't really got the option if you have to drive, 3 days to get home.
Yeah, yeah, no, it definitely I noticed this with like my friends who stayed in state. Um and like at the beginning of their first years, they would definitely go home pretty frequently because your first year is kind of hard. It's hard to make friends. It's a new environment, so sometimes you just want to go home. But like when I was in Maine, it would take me like 18 hours with like two different flights and stuff to get home. So I just only went home for Christmas.
That's crazy. Do you think you benefit from that, from having to stay around more, like for longer?
Yeah, I think it is kind of good because it makes you like put yourself in uncomfortable situations, like go out and make friends, like yeah, just do the things that you wouldn't do maybe if you had the option to not do them.
Mm, that's true. And I guess it prepared you well for for a semester in Europe.
Yeah. No, definitely I feel like transferring universities, I kind of had to do first year two times. Because you get to a new university, you're not necessarily a first year, but you also don't know anyone or how things really work. Um, so it was definitely good practice in like putting yourself out there and like just trying to meet as many people as you can, like find things that interest you, stuff like that.
Mm, yeah, that's crazy. I would ask, like, if you were, like, if you weren't an English speaking international, like, what that was like. But I assume you fit in quite well. Just like you made friends quite easily in England. Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely say that like the language not having a language barrier made it easier. It was interesting because some of my friends that I made abroad who English wasn't their first language, they actually found that they had like slightly different personalities when they were speaking in English compared to their like first language, which I thought was really interesting. And I think it makes sense because when it's your second language, you're probably a little bit more limited in how you express yourself. Um, so like my friend said that she found herself more like confident when she was speaking in English because she only, had so much vocabulary and so she would just say it how she knew how to say it and wasn't using a more roundabout way.
Hmm. That's interesting. Did you wait? So what second language do you speak? Or
So
is this just
yeah, I would say Spanish. I could like go to Spain and be fine. I'm working on Chinese. I definitely would not say I'm anywhere close to fluent, but maybe someday. Yeah.
Chinese is so, I mean, I've heard it takes between 10 and 20 years or something to learn Mandarin or Cantonese. I could never dedicate that much time to something.
Yeah, it's definitely like all of the Chinese international students that come to America, I think it's extremely admirable because just like the languages are so different and yeah, yeah, like having to come here and try to find internships and jobs and all that kind of stuff is I don't know. I think it's really cool that people come over and do that.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for that. But then my only, I guess, concern is the fees you have to pay. Because for us, like in the UK, it's obviously like £9,000 for just everyone. Well, I think now it's a bit more, but internationals I know is for my course is like 27, if not 30 plus grand for each year. And that's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah, I think it is fairly rare for international students to get like financial aid in America. Um, so yeah, they are usually paying the full price, which is for private universities like nearing $40,000 a year, which is pretty insane. And I think one of the bad things about that is that we only get a very small percentage of international students, that of course have the money to do that. Um, so I don't know. I feel like it could create stereotypes about like what a Chinese person is like, or like maybe what like an Indian student is like, just because we only get a certain subset of people from that place.
Mm. No, that's definitely true. I can see that a lot in Bristol as well because the demographic of internationals are generally the more wealthier students, right? The guys that are walking around in the Balenciaga shoes. And yeah, it's fascinating to see the other side of different cultures because I mean, I always feel like people are a lot more similar than they are different in different
Mhm.
cultures, but you never get to see that if you don't really go out there.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know. I think one thing with this virus thing, it just makes you realize that even though we say we have all these differences in culture and all that stuff, like we're all just humans. Like we can all get this virus and stuff. So like maybe those differences aren't actually that big.
Yeah, very true. What was your experience like? I mean, I guess start us off by saying where did you travel while you were here?
So, oh gosh, where did I travel? I went to Portugal, Spain, a couple places in Italy, and Morocco. And I think I went to Ireland as well. I really wanted to go to Greece, or Croatia, but that did not happen. Ran out of time.
Oh man, maybe next time.
Yeah.
What would you say was the best part of your trip?
Um, I would say that Morocco is definitely quite the adventure. I had a lot of fun in Edinburgh. I went there with some good friends. It was just, I don't know, I thought the city was beautiful and it was very, I don't know, the architecture was very cool. And then, I'm a Harry Potter fan, so all the Harry Potter references were fun.
Harry Potter's a good one. Do you What's the reading culture like in America? Because I've always seen this whole self-help culture, but I've never really seen you guys talk about anything non-fiction, well, fiction, I should say, other
As
than
far
like
as like,
comics.
is it common for people to read fiction?
Yeah.
I would say that not that many people read in general. I mean, like I'm just speaking like from a college student's perspective, but at least I find that it's hard to find time to read. Um, like I read sometimes in the summer and stuff like that, but usually during the school year, I just don't have time.
No, I can understand that. I've heard that a lot as well, to be fair. A lot of my friends used to read a lot in school, and then suddenly like you get to uni or like the years before that leading up to it, and you just suddenly there are no hours in the day anymore.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you find like are you a reader yourself at the moment?
Yeah, I would say I try to read. One book that I'm working on right now is called Sapiens, which I would definitely recommend. And it's basically the history of like Homo sapiens and like how we evolved, like from being hunter gatherers to creating societies, and it's kind of the how similar we are to the people who were in hunter gatherer societies, and just kind of like why things are the way they are now. I don't know. It's a very interesting book.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny you say that because before the call we were saying how people are generally different and have different experiences. I had the exact same conversation on the podcast as well, like 2 episodes ago, about reading *Sapiens* because of how
So
good it
yeah.
is. That's so wild. Do you feel like, I mean, I guess we talked about it a bit already, but how different do you feel like the experience is at uni, especially from your perspective of course, US versus UK?
I mean, I feel like it more depends on the person. I feel like if you wanted to get an experience where you just party all the time and don't really focus on academics, you can do that anywhere. If you want to focus more on like your school work, you can do that anywhere. So it more depends on the person than the actual university. I mean, I think there's some differences as far as like what's accessible. Like my school is next to Los Angeles, and it's also pretty close to some good like hiking and stuff like that. So that changes your experience. But I think people generally try to, or they like get out of university like what they want to.
Mm. Yeah, that's true. What would you say was your like when you applied in the first place, what were you trying to get out of it? Would you say more like a degree or like what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, I knew I wanted to do liberal arts because it would give me more flexibility as far as like changing majors and stuff. And I knew I wanted something really different from what I had grown up with. Hence going to pretty much the furthest north college in the contiguous United States. Um, but I didn't really know anything like beyond that. And I found out, after I spent a year in like a fairly isolated place that it was pretty important to me, like meeting a lot of different people and also having like a pretty wide variety of experiences. Um, so I guess that like my focus shifted as I like kind of realized what I liked and didn't like.
Mm. Okay. How would you say like you went about like experiencing that? I mean, other than straight up going out and trying new things.
Yeah, I mean, I would say a lot of it was just like the people that I was around. So like Colby had about 1,800 students, which is bigger than Pitzer, but it was also in the middle of rural Maine, and the closest big city was Boston, 3 hours away. Um, so it would, like by the end of freshman year, I felt like I had pretty much met everyone on campus, and I felt like I wouldn't really be expanding my circle at all because there wasn't LA an hour away where I could just like get involved with organizations there or something like that. And I did try to join some clubs, and I joined like an outing club there. Um, but Maine is cold, and so you'd have about 3 months where it's nice enough to go outside and not freeze. But beyond that, it's just kind of dark and cold in my experience. I wasn't hardcore enough to be like those people that are like skiing and avalanches and stuff like that. Um, so I mean, I feel like I did a similar kind of thing in California, but there were just more options for me.
Mm, that makes sense. Is it not easy for you to like drive into Canada then? Because I know Maine is quite close to, well, it's on the border, right?
Mhm.
Is that not
Well, it's
something you could have
not
done?
yeah, yeah, so Maine does border it. My college, I think it took about 2 hours to drive to Canada, but I know that some of the teams would compete with Canadian schools and stuff.
That distance is so wild to me. Like 7 hour drive here, 2 hour drive there. That's so mad.
Yeah, it's a big, big place.
Are you like in terms of neighborhoods? 'Cause obviously in Bristol you have like you can walk between within around your own city. Do you
Mhm.
kind of have like I don't know the term for it. I guess like do you have like city centers in that as well in America, or is it just everything's just so far spread out?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the city, but usually there is like a downtown, which I guess would be equivalent to your city center. But yeah, some cities are a lot more walkable than others. San Francisco, yeah, you can pretty much walk anywhere. Um, but like, yeah, San Antonio would be harder because it's just everything is so spread out. Like there is a downtown, but um, just like take you could drive like 30 minutes and still be in San Antonio if you like wanted to go to a friend's house who lived in a different neighborhood.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, like I know for high school, it took me about 20 minutes to drive to my school.
I mean that's not terrible. It took me like an hour bus ride to get into mine.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's still challenging. Do you think like having hmm like do you prefer it that way, or would you much prefer to be like a UK citizen and just go through our system?
I mean, I like that I don't know, you don't have to go into college knowing exactly what you want to do. But I really liked being able to walk everywhere. I think it's healthier, first of all, but it's also just, I don't know, it makes it seem like there are more things accessible to you if you're just like, oh, it's just like a 10-minute walk away. Like I can go do that. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, yeah. But then I feel like having, having been raised in a society where everything's close, if someone says, "Oh, it's a 10-minute walk away," that just sounds really long to me now. Like walking up Park Street is like the worst part of my day.
It's a good workout. I don't know. I think it was always a good morning, like, oh, it's time to wake up now. You're sweating.
Oh man, yeah. I feel like I would benefit from driving everywhere. I guess because I can drive.
Yeah, I
But
mean, I guess it does definitely give you like realistically it gives you a much wider range of things you can do. Um but yeah, I guess people just don't usually tend to drive like, 2 hours if they don't have to.
yeah, I can't even think of because I mean, other than the obvious states that I know, like Texas, California, and all that, these are all the big, massive states. What are the like? So I imagine if you live in somewhere like Wyoming or somewhere smaller, it wouldn't be the same. Like
Yeah, I
it's like
mean
that.
Wyoming is pretty big.
Oh,
But
really?
there are definitely smaller states. But I feel like people still just kind of drive anyways. I'm not sure. Like I haven't experienced living in a smaller state. I guess Maine is definitely smaller than Texas. But there's just not really a whole lot in Maine, so I never really had a reason to drive anywhere.
Yeah, true. What's your opinion on the like how your finances work? Because obviously you got to take out fat loans and pay
Yeah,
for
no,
uni, right?
I wish that it was easier there was better access to education for sure. I think the issue is just growing, like, financial aid and loans and stuff, they help a little bit, but just the price of college is pretty absurd. Um, and I think that is kind of a responsibility of the government to be taking on, some responsibilities for students so that they don't graduate with like, $180,000 of student debt. Because education is pretty important, I would say, and foundational and just like creating educated citizens and stuff. And that's not even just talking about like stuff like liberal arts schools, even stuff that's like practical training skill like schools where you learn to become like a mechanic or something like that. Making that accessible is just as important because we need mechanics.
Yeah, yeah, I know for sure. I definitely because in the UK our system's a bit more. I don't even know if you how much you looked into it here, but we have like apprenticeships where
Mhm.
most of the training jobs, like in terms of straight up mechanics, you can be taught as an apprentice and you get paid to learn at the same time. And I feel
Mhm.
like that whole thing is, I mean, I never did it and I don't really regret not doing it either, but I feel like there's so much potential in, training contracts or things like that, as opposed to just paying for anything in general, because you paying for it kind of makes it seem like you're getting something out of it. Whereas you shouldn't
Mhm.
need to get a job out of uni because you should just be able to get jobs like as it is.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, I just think that people are different and like some people are just not made to do a 4-year course and study liberal arts. Some people it just makes a lot more sense to just go into technical training like that, like get your degree in like 2 years or something like that. And I feel like that option should be available to people who want it.
Yeah, absolutely. How much did you pay across your three unis?
So yeah, basically the tuition for the private universities is I think it's 42,000 for a year.
That's a whole
Yeah.
degree.
Yep. Yeah, so you guys have it good for sure. And there are definitely like cheaper options. There's like community college. I don't know if you guys have something like that.
Is that just where it's free entirely?
No, it's not free, but it's a lot cheaper. And it's usually what people do is they do like 1 or 2 years at community college. so that they only have to spend like 1 or 2 years in like a 4 year institution, which are more expensive. And then there's also in-state versus out-of-state. So usually if you live in a state, you're going to have in-state schools where it's probably around the price of, it's probably more expensive, probably like 10,000 a semester or something, for in-state people. But yeah, like Texas has UT Austin, and A&M, which are big in-state schools. So if you live in Texas, then you get that discount. Otherwise, if you're an out-of-state student, you'd have to pay like the $42,000 or whatever.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
How
so
come you
it's
have to?
important to be in a state that has good schools, I guess.
Yeah, literally. I mean, if you're born somewhere, or if you live in a state without the school that you don't want to go to, it's you're kind of screwed.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's not good, and it's not, I don't know, it's not accessible.
Yeah, not at all. Is that? I mean, I feel like based on what I know of, I've seen pictures of like Cornell's and MIT's and these massive like colleges. I feel like the money is at least put to good use. Is that fair to say? Like you have massive sports fields, big facilities, like a lot of trips.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really varies per school. And like whether or not the money is being allocated well is always up for debate. Because, if you think about it from a university, like a private university perspective, like it kind of is like a business, right? You want to attract good students, so you want it to look all good and shiny. But, there might be underlying issues, like are the mental health resources being provided to students, like stuff that people don't really think about, or like aren't as like visual. I'm not sure if that's the right word. But yeah, I don't know. I think some schools are doing better jobs at allocating their funds, than others. I think that one of the benefits of like having the smaller private school is that, yeah, you do get that like kind of one-on-one attention with professors. And like you might have just in general like better connections with people who are in, an industry that you're interested in or something like that.
Yeah. It very much reminds me of like how private schooling works in the UK, where you have like the craziest resources, the craziest network, but then of course it comes at a price.
Hmm.
And I suppose it does come down to the student at the end of the day, like if you're going to make the most of what you have or, coast through. But then it's good how you mentioned mental health because I feel like that very much determines, whether you enjoy uni or not.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of schools, are not allocating enough resources towards those kinds of services, just because, like when you're on your college tour, you don't, people ask about, the sports field or the science program or whatever, but no one really thinks about like, oh, but if you're struggling with your mental health, like are there resources to be supported here? Um, so I think it goes overlooked, or it is overlooked a lot by colleges.
That's a shame. Do you feel like there is at least because I mean in Bristol we have like the student support services, you can talk to a wellbeing advisor and like whether, it's up for debate whether these resources are actively promoted, but at least they're there if you need them. Do you
Mhm.
feel like there's some sort of structure in place? Well, I guess it's difficult to say for all of America, but like for your college or for your experience, or is it more of just like a complete oversight?
Yeah, I mean, my experience with the health system in the UK was like pretty favorable as far as, like most things don't cost anything. Like just going to see the doctor for something doesn't cost anything. So I think like the whole healthcare system is in general better in the UK. Um, but as far as like on campus mental health resources, I would say it definitely varies between school. Um, and I think our schools kind of were having an issue with just understaffing in general. And like it would take like a month to get your first appointment, something like that, which I think is a pretty big deal because if you're having an issue now, a lot of things can change in a month.
Mm. Yeah, that's fascinating, especially because Bristol is very much known for mental health.
Mm.
Let me try not to get expelled or anything, but yeah, I would have thought that, especially because America, I feel like you guys are very much on top of like the Me Too movement and all these like a lot of things seem to originate or at least be amplified in America. I guess
Hmm.
from that image, I'd always expect you to be more on the ball with these sorts of things.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really does vary with like region and school and stuff like that. And I think our situation is a little bit different because of the consortium. So basically, the mental health resources are a shared resource among the 5 schools. So in order to fund it, all of the schools have to agree on something rather than just one school having to decide. So I think that slows down a lot of changes in budget or decisions that need to be made.
Mm, that's so wild. I can see how that's difficult with, 5 institutions instead of one.
Yeah,
But then intuitively, you'd assume that that's like 5 times the budget, so you should be able to.
in
And I
theory,
mean,
yes.
yeah, in theory, but even still, like 9,000 is not a lot of people. You'd think, one
Yeah,
counselor for every 100 students, even though it sounds ridiculous, like you'd think that would be, doable or enough.
yeah, definitely.
Is there like, I mean, I'm trying to, I'm trying as hard as I can to avoid politics because I know that it's never going to end well.
Mhm.
But the whole school shooting culture, is that prominent like in unis as well, or is that very much just lower schools?
Um, I don't know. Like, what do you mean? Like, are people worried about it a lot in uni?
Yeah, like, do you guys have like training or anything? Because I remember reading about how some teachers have been trained how to use guns in case of these sorts of situations.
Yeah, as far as I know, no teachers. I mean, I'm sure they probably received some sort of training, like if there was a lockdown. Like, I think they just generally call it like a lockdown procedure. Um, but there isn't really a whole lot of talk about that. I think mainly because the schools are kind of smaller, so we might not be such a big target. Um, but I remember last summer I was a teacher for a kids coding camp. So these were like kids like 8 to 14 or whatever, and we were definitely trained in like what to do if there was like an active shooter and like where to take the kids and like how to barricade the door and stuff like that. Um, so I think maybe it is a concern more for like the younger schools, but I'm not really sure.
Yeah, that's so wild. I mean, I could never imagine what that's like. I mean, we haven't even got guns in the UK. So
Yeah, yeah, the gun issue in America is an interesting one.
yeah, that's a whole different podcast though.
Yeah, sure.
I don't even know where, because like again, trying to avoid politics. The way things are done here, I feel like I mean, we complain a lot about just things in general, but it's never anything. Like, there's no like, healthcare's free. There are generally resources for everyone. You're generally safe going around. Is that? I mean, you've always seemed like a bubbly person anyway, but what's the threat level in terms of how free are you really?
I mean, I think it kind of it varies again by state. So like I would say definitely growing up in Texas is different from growing up in California. Like pretty much every family I know owns at least a gun, one gun. Not that they like carry it around all the time, although I do know some people who like kind of always have a gun on them. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily I mean, I would prefer personally for there to be less guns, but I think at this point there are so many guns in so many households that it's kind of hard to go back from that. Um, I mean, I don't really feel I don't know, I guess I don't think about it that much because maybe I've grown up with guns being around. But I mean, I would say relative to the UK, there's probably more concern or like more feeling of threat because I know like when I spoke to some people over in the UK, they'd be like, "Oh, I don't want to come to the US because everyone's just going to shoot each other." But I don't think that there's like that much of an active concern as far as I can tell.
Yeah, fair enough. I think for me, like, I mean, guns aside, I I wouldn't say I'm scared to go to America. Like, I still want to go at some point. I've talked to you in the past as well about like road trips and stuff, but it
Hmm.
always seems like discrimination is such a big thing, be it like race related or gender related. Like, America seems so slow to react to, the bigger social issues.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, it goes down the area, I think. And I think one of the reasons why it's like more talked about in the US is because the US is pretty diverse. Um, and so like there's more of a chance for there to be like issues with racial discrimination and stuff like that. Whereas, if your population is generally homogeneous, then like those issues probably won't come up as much.
Hmm. Have you experienced anything like that? Not necessarily like a gun threat, but have you been? Because I imagine, I don't know. Like in the UK, most of the Chinese people that live, well, that study here, I guess, are international, and
Mhm,
there's a very much like, what's the word? Like you kind of assume, but there's a smarter word for
mhm,
it. Have you been? Because I mean, obviously, you're like as soon as you talk, I know you're American, but
mhm.
have you experienced anything like that? Any like maybe racism or sexism?
I mean, I would definitely say that there's always just kind of like little things that people will kind of assume about you. Just like being Asian in general, like anywhere you go. As far as racism, like kind of, I feel like it wasn't really outright like, oh, this person's saying something very racist to me, but just kind of implied in terms of like, oh, like I recognize you're like different from, the other white people or something like that. Um, but I don't know. I think like it really varies because like California, for example, like a large proportion of the population is Asian, so it's going to be very different being Asian in California versus being Asian in Maine. Um, so yeah, I think it really varies.
Yeah, that's very true. I feel like Andrew Yang would have changed all that, but
Yang Gang 2020.
uh, I find it fascinating how like I mean in the UK is very much like we have I would say two dominant parties and then it's very much like it's a 50-50 I'll say every year, but in the last decade or so it's kind of been obviously conservative, but we'll talk about that later. But
Mhm.
I find it fascinating how America is very much like the biggest budget wins unless you're Bloomberg.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's definitely still a two-party system, which I think is limiting. But yeah, the whole way elections are, I don't know that much about how elections are funded in the UK. But I think that yeah, there's definitely an issue with how PACs is what they're called, like can like basically companies can fund like a candidate and stuff, and how that'll affect policy in unfair ways.
Hmm. Super weird. Have you been? I mean, such a random like. I don't even know why I'm asking this, but how have you found like the whole stimulus check thing? Are you eligible for that at all?
I don't think I am because I'm a dependent. And as far as I know, I don't think that they're including like college age students. I haven't read that much into it, um, because I think it's more for people who were like fully employed and are no longer employed.
Okay, because I don't know. I've been reading a lot about how I think they're trying to introduce a new policy. Is it to give everyone like 2 grand a month? That's like 16 plus, and I don't know. I might move to America soon.
Yeah, no, I know that they had the initial the $2 trillion bill that they were like a like relief package basically. And I think that they were talking about a second one as well because just the unemployment has been crazy and yeah, just the whole economy of this whole thing is unprecedented.
Yeah. Have you actually experienced that? Because I mean, it's one thing to read headlines, but what's it been like locally in terms of, 6 million jobs lost or all these big numbers?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I personally haven't experienced it because most of the people I talk to are, university students who had the option to go home and just kind of live with their families.
Yeah.
Um, but I do know that like San Antonio is generally not like a super wealthy city. So like the food bank is having a huge issue because like thousands and thousands of people, they can't afford food anymore, so that they're just lining up in cars to try to get food and stuff like that.
So scary, man. I
Yeah.
I feel like because obviously this isn't a banking issue, it's more of a science one, I guess, if anything. But I've always been optimistic that within the next few months, maybe a year max, things will be fine. But just seeing the numbers is it's just so scary. I feel like, especially in America, because you guys seem to be doing the worst.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is relative because we're such a huge country. Um, but yeah, as far as like things going back to normal, I think it's going to take a long time, and I think it's also dependent on yeah whether or not the virus mutates and that kind of thing, and if governments are smart and we stay kind of vigilant with the restrictions and stuff. But I don't think anyone can really predict exactly what's going to happen.
Mm. How was your? Because I mean, I know obviously you're doing online work from now on, but how have you really adapted towards a new climate? Because here it's just everything is just Zoom or Skype, and there's nothing really else to do.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely been very different in terms of just not having any structure really. Aside from having, 4 hours of class or whatever where you have to like turn on your computer. Before it was like, you go to class, but you also have like your clubs and you also have your meetings with your advisors or whatever. And so there's just a lot more structure in every day. Um, and so for me, it's been kind of creating my own structure because I do like structure a lot. So like making my own schedule and being like, okay, this is the time where I'm gonna go on my walk, or like this is the time where I'm gonna cook and do stuff like that, or talk to my friends.
Yeah, I can definitely get behind that. I feel like the worst part, well, things will be the worst when you lose that structure because getting up at like 3 p.m. is
Yeah,
is not the way forward.
yeah, definitely.
I don't know. I find it tough. I think it's different because obviously you started classes. Most unis in the UK, or at least to my knowledge, don't really start until Monday, if not the week afterwards.
Hmm.
And yeah, I don't know what I'll do. Like summer is my biggest concern, I guess, because assuming we're still locked down, once you lose that premise of, I got to work towards these exams or whatever, it's kind of like, what next? Trying to find time to do things. Well, find
Yeah.
things to do in that time.
Yeah. No, I feel like even though, a lot of people are concerned about, I think rightfully concerned about having school at home because, not everyone has the same home environment. School has been like a little bit of, an opportunity to like have something to do that I have to do. So a little bit of structure.
Mm. Do you do much, like, what do you do outside of studying?
I try to go outside when I can. I think I don't know. I personally find that exercise is really, really good for you. Just in terms of I don't know. I mean, there's the whole fitness thing, but it gets you outside and like scientifically, it releases endorphins and stuff like that. So I'd say definitely like trying to do something active every day has been really helpful. Staying in contact with my friends for sure has been good. Um, I'm working on like trying to learn Chinese, Duolingo, which isn't going to make me fluent, but it'll increase my vocabulary at least. Um, and I don't know, just trying to like kind of learn things like cooking, stuff that I kind of put off before, but now I have no excuse to not do it.
Yeah, very true. I've been trying to cook recently, and it's going okay. I haven't burnt much yet.
Yeah, it's a learning process. You have to like make some bad things and then eventually they'll hopefully become good.
I've learned that, an ounce of sweet and sour sauce will save most things, so.
Oh no. Yeah, yeah, sure.
How have you find, because obviously I know that what your diet is like, but how have you found, you know, like a limiting diet, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it really goes down to just kind of like what makes you feel good. One thing I've been looking into is because I feel like there are a ton of different diets out there. There's like, the keto diet and the like this diet and that diet. And I think it goes down to more just eating things that are kind of natural and minimally processed. And so like, yeah, I have like some dietary restrictions because of health issues and stuff like that. But in general, I think it just makes sense for people to be eating things that aren't as processed because we survived thousands of years without boxed cereal or something like that. So there's no reason why we couldn't just cut that out now. And I think it does kind of change how you feel. What you eat influences how you feel. So I mean, just kind of try to eat things that make you feel good.
Yeah, feel good foods.
Hmm.
You're, wait, vegetarian, right? Well, like
So
fundamentally, I guess.
I
Is that right?
was vegetarian for 5 years, but then I developed a gluten intolerance, and I'm also lactose intolerant. So that took out a lot of food groups because a lot of like fake meats actually have gluten in them. Um, so yeah, now I'd say like the closest thing that my diet would be like a paleo diet. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. But the emphasis on that is mainly just eating unprocessed foods, like closest to their natural state as possible.
So weird. I mean, I'm someone who I don't think twice about what I eat or what I buy, purely
Mhm.
because like I don't know, I live very much in the what's it called? Like the sale section of shops.
Yeah.
And my experience at least is that meats are generally cheaper than vegetables. Like for £2, I can get 4 meals out of chicken, whereas that's one bag of apples.
Hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. It just seems very difficult to get around knowing that you can't eat certain things, especially if it's for health issues. Because if you're vegetarian by choice, like when push comes to shove, I imagine people would, would falter that if it's like a life or death situation. But
Hmm.
yeah, like what's that been like for you? Because I don't know. For me, I would definitely struggle, especially in uni, having to cook every day. If I couldn't
Yeah.
eat, if I was
Yeah. No,
lactose
I
intolerant, for
think
example.
I think food accessibility is definitely also an issue. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with the terms like food desert, stuff like
No.
that. So basically, the idea behind food desert is that kind of the government subsidizes more unhealthy foods, like sodas and processed foods and stuff like that, so they become cheaper. So in a food desert, all of those things would be available, but there isn't like fresh produce and stuff like that, so people don't even have the option really. Um, so I think that kind of, depends on location. I keep saying that. But it's definitely, I guess, maybe from like a social aspect, it's harder. As far as like, well, no one's eating out now, but back in the day when people did go out to eat at restaurants, you always have to be worried about like, oh, can I go to this restaurant? Like, I can't really go to pizza restaurants or like, stuff like that. But I mean, if you think about it, a lot of places, if you just take off like certain sauces or something, it'll be fine. Because not having dairy or gluten is just kind of plain food, just like grilled chicken and vegetables or something like that. So I feel like it kind of forces me to be healthy, which is probably good.
Yeah, I guess in the grand scheme of things, it is. I mean, this whole situation's made me think a lot more about, I guess, general health. Like, I've never been a smoker anyway, but for me, it's like people that are looking at, a respiratory, blah, blah, a breathing disease,
Mhm.
and still freely smoke. It's like, surely you'd think, you want to keep your chances high. And the more I think about that, the more it transpires through to why I eat. I mean, I still don't really check labels much, but I'm definitely more aware of like such and such vitamins or such and such acids and things like that that may not necessarily be uh useful, I guess, in the long run.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I actually don't know. I know some people are very like aware of counting macros. I don't even really know what that means. Um, and stuff. Um, and I don't know. I don't think you necessarily have to be that aware of it. I think definitely one of the biggest things is sugar and added sugar. Like a lot of things, way more things than you would think have added sugar to it when it's just kind of not necessary. And I think that sugar is also really addictive. So I guess if that's something if you want to try to be eating healthier, that's just something to look out for.
Yeah, to be fair, my biggest, like I want to say change in the last year or so is Costco,
Mm.
because once you get into those American portions, I think I went to Costco yesterday even, and I bought a hot dog for like a pound, expecting like a little, UK size hot dog, and I get a whole quarter, like half a pound.
Yeah, yeah. Portion sizes do matter for sure. They change things. Yeah.
It's insane. I mean, I guess it's different because your diet's already restricted, but did you experience at all like having to eat or order more food here, like once you were in the UK compared to back home, or was it more or less the same?
I mean, I personally found it to be kind of the same. I think Bristol is kind of a bit of a bubble in terms of having a lot of really good access to good food. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think. I guess the only big difference is there wasn't as much fast food options in Bristol. There wasn't a McDonald's at every corner. Like in Texas, we have Whataburger. So yeah, I would say that would be the main difference that I noticed.
Mm. What would you rank Bristol in terms of your favorite cities?
Favorite cities like in the whole world?
Well, that you've been to, I guess, in
um,
the world. Why not?
oh man, I mean, I really liked Bristol for sure, and they're known to be like the vegan, gluten-free like center of the UK or something, right? So I
Yeah.
definitely I found more options in Bristol than I have in Texas for sure. Like in Texas, they'll be like, "What is gluten?" I don't even know what gluten is. And we put butter, we fry everything, we put butter on everything. So yeah, I thought Bristol, I don't know, I really love Bristol. I'm trying to think of other places that I traveled while I was abroad. I think I talked about Edinburgh before. I think Spain is incredible, just in general. Every city I've been there has been really cool.
Is it? I mean, I know it's a stereotype already, but would you say that Europe's nicer than America in terms of the people?
That's interesting. Oh man, I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm trying to I kind of dividing my interactions between like people I just meet on the street, and I feel like I never really interacted with people just like on the subway or on the street that much, and I also don't really interact with people like that in Texas as far as like getting to know people. I would say that I don't know, at least the UK students said that they felt like Americans were a lot more open and they would just kind of say whatever they wanted and were like, "Oh yeah, like come join us, whatever, it's not a big deal." And in the UK, like it takes a while for people to warm up to you. And like I felt like people maybe were a little bit more reserved at the beginning of first meeting them. But overall, I wouldn't say that like Americans are like gonna be better people than people in the UK or anything like that.
So I guess in summary, you're saying that Americans are evil.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
That's interesting. I feel like, well, then again, I see where you're coming from. A lot of people in the UK, we're not necessarily, oh, come and join us. We're not, uh, I suppose, as outward as
Hmm.
I can imagine, some other people might be. But I don't know. I've never really thought of that, that aspect.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
guess it comes down to like not tribalism, but you have your group and you kind of stick to it. I feel like that sort of let's call it squad culture for lack of a better word, but just staying in your group. I definitely feel that as a prominent thing here. More so in uni, I feel like than like when I was in school or like just on the street, for example. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
an interesting point.
I think it obviously depends on the person too. Like if you're just not that outgoing of a person, like then you're probably just not going to go up to people and start up conversations.
Mm. Because I think when I went to Singapore, I noticed a lot that purely because it's warmer there are so many more things you can do. Like if you want to go out, you can, but you can also stay outside or go to a zoo, or there are so many options.
Hmm.
Whereas in the UK, at least in my experience, it's very much like it's too cold to do anything else other than, go to the pub or stay
Uh,
outside with your friends. And there's a whole culture of like, let's go to Spoons or, let's go out. There's not really, there's no zoo culture like there
yeah,
is in warmer countries.
yeah. I would definitely say that having good weather opens up a lot of options for sure.
it's generally warm in like Texas, right?
Yes, it's generally like pretty hot. I don't know. Okay, wait, let me see if I can translate it. Um, so basically, it's already like this past week in Texas, it was already 37, like almost 37 degrees.
Celsius.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, our summers are usually pretty rough, like up towards like 40, 42. Um, so yeah, in southern Texas. So I'm in southern Texas, but northern Texas in the winters it snows all the time. But that's like an 8-hour drive away, so that makes sense.
That's so weird to imagine. Like Texas is very, well, not very, but you're closer to the equator than we are. I
Mhm.
can't imagine there being snow.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a big state, so
That's crazy. I mean, San Antonio is closer to, you're quite close to Mexico, right?
we're about like a 3 hour, 3.5 hour, 4 hour drive to Mexico. So I wouldn't say like close, close. There are definitely some cities in Texas that are like right on the border. Like you could like touch Mexico and still be in Texas.
Well, touch the wall anyway.
Yeah.
What's the capital? Well, not capital, but the main part of Texas is Dallas, right? Or Houston.
Yeah, the capital. So the capital is Austin, which is about 1 hour north of San Antonio. The big cities are San Antonio, Austin, Houston, and Dallas, I would say.
Do you get to like how close are you to where the rockets take off?
So I think that's Houston. So Houston and Dallas are both about a 5 hour drive away.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's I don't get there very frequently.
That's so wild. It's hard to wrap my head around such long distances. I think the
Yeah.
longest I've ever driven is to Liverpool, and that's 3.5, maybe 4 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean the UK is relative to the US pretty small.
I wonder how many UKs you can fit in Texas.
I don't know. I have seen a map though of Texas superimposed on Germany, and it's definitely larger than Germany.
That is so wild. Do you like how frequently do you have to fly?
I mean, I guess I don't fly that often just because my lifestyle is I go to college. So like I drive to school, I stay there, and then I like drive home for Christmas or whatever. And then I think like once you like graduate, it really depends on your job. If you travel a lot, then you would fly a lot. Otherwise, not really. I mean, maybe for vacations.
Mm. Surely that will have a big impact on your like job making. Like it's gonna be hard to work outside of your state, surely, unless you move.
Yeah, no, you would definitely have to relocate for that. If you like, yeah, if you get a job in a different state, you definitely would move.
Yeah. So when it comes to like internships or grad schemes, well, I don't know if you even have that, but what's your process for applying stuff like that? Because that must be a
So
big move.
companies usually, I don't know about like full-time roles, but companies will pay for your relocation fees. Um, so yeah, like with my internship, they were gonna cover. They made it remote now, but they were gonna cover like my flight to California, housing for the summer, and then my flight back home.
That's crazy. Do
Mhm.
they still pay you to work, or is it just like the does
Yeah.
that kind of come out of it?
No, so there was like the stipend for housing, and then there was the pay for the actual work.
That's so crazy. I would love to work in Silicon Valley as like an internship because as an intern you can kind of do what you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're really great opportunities for mentorship because like once you get a job, like you do the work that you're assigned, but being an intern, you get to ask more questions, I feel like.
Mm. Have you really had much of that in your like short time?
So I have had internships before. I had an internship at a really small startup, which I think was a really good experience as far as just all hands on deck. You have to really do some work because there isn't anyone else around to do it for you. So I would say that like having an internship at a small startup would be really different from being at a big company. Like definitely very big different experiences. Um, yeah, like the company I'm working for this summer is bigger, so I'm excited to like have like a formal mentor and stuff like that.
Hmm. Are you purposely avoiding the name, or am I allowed to ask? Right.
No, I mean, yeah, I'm gonna be a product manager at Reddit.
I wonder what that's like. Is that just like managing through different threads or different
Yeah,
r slashes?
so I think it has to do with kind of more user experience. So I'm specifically working on like the search team. So that would be like improving like people's like are they getting to the content they want to, as well as kind of working. So a lot of Reddit's traffic comes through people just doing Google searches, and then like a Reddit thread will show up.
Mm.
So like kind of optimizing that kind of thing.
How hmm, how techy are you?
I'm a computer science major. I don't know if that tells you.
Yeah, but I mean, you picked biology first, so I have to ask.
I mean, I would say that I'm probably not on the like I wouldn't say I'm super techy, like I don't wear tech shirts, and I have interests outside of the computer. Um, but I would say that technology is really interesting to me, and I think that there's a lot of it can do a lot of good, and there's a lot of really, really great things that can come out of tech. And I think that there's also a lot of work that needs to be done as far as like encouraging those like for good projects or social good products. Because with big tech, it's easy to get sucked into making products that aren't really that helpful. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of unnecessary products made for people, a very small subgroup of people who can afford them.
Yeah, like there's definitely an accessibility issue, I want to say, within tech.
Hmm.
But then I don't know. I guess it's because from a UK standpoint, we don't really have many big tech companies. I mean, all the big phone brands are, Apple is obviously American, is Google.
Hmm.
You have so much going on in America, and for me, as a UK person, it's kind of like just having access to that in general, or like especially living in California, being close to it, is something that's unparalleled. But then, yeah, I can definitely see like it's interesting how, of course, a new iPhone came out today, even maybe yesterday, for like what 390, and you can definitely see companies taking a lot more interest in, I want to say compromise as opposed to innovation and just making all these unnecessary. I mean, like four cameras, who needs that? But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I see what you mean. Is that something that you've like observed firsthand, or is it more or less just kind of what you see on the news?
Um, yeah, I don't know. I would say it probably is more on the news because the majority of my experience has been still in college, and I haven't really spent that much time in industry. But if you just kind of look sometimes at the products that are being put out, like one thing that I've been trying to engage with is kind of tech for good, or the idea of tech for good,
Mm.
like philanthropy projects and stuff like that. And I feel like you don't hear that much about those kinds of projects. In like big tech news. It's more about like the fancy drone gadget or like, wearable, video cameras and stuff like that. Uh, so yeah, I don't know. I would like to see more work being done to like for like improving people's lives and stuff like that in meaningful ways because I think tech has the money for sure and it has the resources as far as brain power. So yeah, I think we should be trying to focus more energy on that.
Yeah, absolutely. How have you been like finding these projects? Because I mean, I know there are so many, like this Financial Times, for example, that is very focused on economics, but there's no, unless I'm just naive to it, but I haven't seen any big tech for good spaces out there. Like, how do you come around to finding or hearing about these things?
Yeah, no, I definitely think that there's not a whole lot of stuff like that out there. I think it comes kind of from the fact that in our engineering educations, we aren't really taught about ethics. It's not a core part of, the classes you have to take and stuff like that. So people just aren't thinking about it as much. So then that kind of translates to in industry, people also aren't thinking about it that much. But I would say like the most prominent places maybe that you might find it is like all of these big companies like Apple and or not Apple, but I know Google and Microsoft at least they have like a philanthropy department. So like they are there, they're just not really talked about that much, I would say. And then I know at least at a college level, like I'm involved in like my local Tech for Good organization, and we work on like bringing speakers to campus that talk about ethics and stuff like that. But it is definitely like a smaller subset of people, and hopefully it's growing, and I think it is growing. But just talking about, like policy in tech isn't really talked about that much, like what's ethical and not. But I think the conversations are growing slowly.
Mm. Yeah, that's a very, very good point. I didn't even realize that as much, but it's hard to say, I guess, 'cause I still have 2 years left of uni, but engineering, at least in my, limited experience, is all a lot of maths, a lot of application, a lot of how to do things, but you've never really been taught about ethics. So that's an interesting point. I do feel like there's an underlying, I want to say pressure in industry to keep prices down, but to speed things up. Because I guess when you're in a project-based industry, it's very much like we'll take this contract for X amount, and then someone else will be like, "Oh, we'll do it in half the time for half as much." And I feel like that business side is a big like stagnation point. But yeah, it'll be interesting to hear more about the ethics behind it and why decisions are made, as opposed to four squared is 16.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely it's a tough issue because it makes sense. Like if you're getting an engineering degree in computer science, like you have to know like the fundamentals of computer science and like how to code and stuff like that. Um, so it's definitely hard to argue for something that people might consider more fluffy. It's not essential to making the most efficient algorithm or something like that. But I think what people need to realize is that, the algorithm that you're creating is not going to be acting in a vacuum. It's going to have implications that you probably aren't going to be aware of unless you have a group of people that are specifically thinking about it.
Mm. Yeah, it is sticky though, because I feel like I was talking to my friend about this the other day when it comes to like the law side of it, the legislation,
Mm-hmm.
and how far these laws are behind in terms of, let's say, electric cars, for example. There's no real legislation about who takes the blame if there's an accident.
Yeah.
And I definitely think like there's a big void there in terms of lawyers that know about tech and then technologists that know about law. I think that's probably the biggest, biggest hole in the market, I guess.
Yeah. No, I definitely think policy is yeah, I mean that always happens though. I think in science in general, like policy lags behind innovation. So just hopefully it'll naturally come eventually.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm definitely going to look more into the ethics behind it as well, because that's an interesting point. Have you been taught anything about that in your, because I know you said you bring speakers and stuff, but are
Yeah.
you learning about that in uni, or is it just you're going out of your way to find it?
I would say that like the majority of like my direct engagement more with Tech for Good has been through clubs and outside of school. I am currently in like a social justice and ethics class for STEM just in general, which is a discussion-based class, and it's more about understanding the inequity in tech or in STEM and why it's arisen. Which I think, I mean, it's not like the class that'll teach you everything about ethics, but I think it's a good starting point for at least understanding why things are the way that they are now, as far as tech not being super diverse, and having it be majority like white male dominated and stuff like that.
Mm. I do feel like there is a not necessarily a stigma, but let's look at the first adverts, for example, of like PCs and then Xboxes and all this stuff. Like it was very much the young boy, sitting there playing or learning how to code and all of that. And even though tech's a very new industry, it's fascinating how just by blowing up in the time it did, it tends to suit one demographic over others. Because you'd think, tech's only really blown up in the last 20, 30 years. You'd think it would be more diverse, more accessible. But this whole, I guess, for lack of a better word, the whole nerd like stereotype is still very prominent.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, it's kind of like a chicken and egg problem, right? Because you have the developers and people who are prominent in tech, and so they're creating with their demographic in mind. And so, if you think about like, I think the most common example is thinking about like products, right? If you have like a group of people who all kind of have the same experiences and background and stuff creating for a product, they're going to be thinking about a specific kind of user. But that user, there might also be other users, and like different things you should be considering. Um, so yeah, I agree. It's an issue.
Yeah, it's very weird. I remember speaking to someone recently, an employer, and he was talking about how he was in a startup like very early in his career, and he worked on like an AI that would filter between the good candidates instead of doing those CVs by himself. And he was saying like he put in all these input variables and stuff, and he was surprised when it turned out that everyone that got through to the interview process were all middle-aged white guys.
Mm.
And I think he realized at the time that no matter how thoroughly you refine your algorithms or your systems or whatever, it's fundamentally about the your input data. Like if you grow up in a certain environment, you're obviously going to tailor towards like a college degree or a certain, learning two languages, for example. And those historic, I don't know what to say, like skills, I guess. Those skill sets are very, up until recently, I guess, have been reserved for, for the middle class white people. And I think yeah, it is tough. I don't really know how they can fix that other than having more color people or more ethnic minorities, as to say, in those positions. But then, as you say, it's chicken and egg issue where it's like, how do you get them there in the first place?
Yeah, yeah, no, I think as far as yeah, like algorithms and stuff, like the issue is that people are implicitly biased. So how do you make people not biased? That's a really tough question. And then as far as like getting more people into STEM fields, like there's some research that's been done as far as like what keeps people in STEM fields, or keeps like underrepresented groups in STEM fields. And a lot of it has to go down to like the amount of support that they get throughout their education. So I think that there are ways. Like it's not going to be easy to implement, and it probably won't happen anytime soon. But it is showing that there is potential, I guess, to change and to like retain people of color and stuff like that in STEM fields.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Just make sure all the good Reddits rank highest.
Yeah.
How have you found it as a girl in STEM? Because like, is it women in engineering? It's quite prominent here in Bristol, but what's your, I guess, direct experience?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that California has is pretty good relatively about keeping a gender balance. So I actually studied CS at two of the colleges in the consortium, Harvey Mudd and Pomona. And Harvey Mudd, I think, actually has like a 50% like male to female ratio. So I thought that was really, really incredible. Like my classes, I never really noticed anything as far as my classes being imbalanced. Um, I would say definitely in Bristol, I felt more of a difference as far as there not being very many women in my CS classes. Um, and like, I guess, yeah, it's true. Like the classes were way bigger. So maybe there's just like a higher probability that there would be less women. I feel like I noticed it more in Bristol though. And then as far as like being in industry, I guess my only real experience there was um, being in that small startup. And I definitely noticed that a lot of like the CEOs and people in charge were male. And like if there were females, they wouldn't really be in like the top positions, CEO, CTO, that kind of thing.
Mm, yeah, I get that. I do find it interesting because when it comes to the top positions, even though I'm an advocate for getting more people of color in those positions, the way I see it is it's been unfair for so long, and it's a thing where the CEO is going to be a white male, the next in line is going to be a white male, and the next like 20 people in line are all going to be white males, not just because
Yeah.
of how things are now, but more so because of historical trends.
Hmm.
Like I find it interesting. Like I'm gonna obviously take a look and see how long it takes for things to change, but it's definitely a thing that I don't think we can really observe within the next 50 years.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to take a lot of time for sure because change takes time always. Um, but I don't know. I don't think that's a reason to not keep fighting for it or whatever, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Would you ever start your own business?
As far as startups, I would say like probably no. I could see myself like joining leadership in maybe an already established company, but basically what I saw from my startup experience is that like it's very high amount of work with a potential like high risk, high amount of work. And I feel like that's not really the best environment for me personally. Just because like I like to be secure in knowing that like my hard work will definitely pay off and like it'll progress the company further or whatever. But with startups, you know, it's very iffy. Like you could make it or you could very much not make it, and most of them don't. So I feel like it would just be really sad to see, you know, 5 years of work, constant work on this one project just not work out.
Yeah, I get that. For me, it's more like I would rather start because I think I read somewhere that the average company or the average startup takes 3 years to go bust.
Hmm.
And I would much rather work for 10 years on three startups that have them all fail and learn a lot than work in a small team in Google and not go anywhere for 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely I think that that's very understandable, and I can like see that. I guess the attraction for big companies for me is has to do with because I want to do philanthropy work, and I know that these big companies have a lot of money to put towards it. I feel like I have more opportunities at a bigger company to do more impactful work because they just have more resources for that kind of thing.
Mm, I get that. Would you like to? Because I think my not necessarily a dream, but like a big goal of mine would be to work not necessarily for Google, but like with them, where I have full autonomy on a project and they just fund it, or and I kind of get a freedom to do what I want, but with the comfort of knowing that Google will back it and that's for a
Mhm.
good cause. Is that something
Mhm.
that you're looking for as well, or is it straight up just working for a big company in the philanthropy team?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know that much about logistics of like the difference between like getting funded or just working within the philanthropy department. Um, I mean, like, so we've had a couple speakers come to my school who have worked within like the Microsoft philanthropy organization, and it seems like they had fairly good control over the kind of project that they could do or like how exactly their project went. More specifically, they were working in India, getting like computers and computer access to like schools there. Um, and it seemed like they had a pretty good amount of control over like how exactly the project went down and stuff like that. But I don't know that much about it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Are there any projects that you follow at the moment?
Any products or projects?
Projects, philanthropy projects.
Um, I'm trying to think. I don't think there are any like really specific ones. I know that Google has a cool one. I forget the name of it now. But basically, it's the idea is like having a telephone pole encapsulated in like a hot air balloon. So basically, this hot air balloon, you could like have it somewhere in like a more rural region, but it would actually supply Wi-Fi to the region without having to build like an expensive like you know radio tower or something like that.
That's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. Tech. I don't know. I think it's just an example of how tech can very purposely be used to like you know helping other people and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think I'm a big advocate for what Tesla do, irrespective
Mhm.
of individual views of Elon Musk. But I think, and not just Tesla to be fair, but there are a lot of companies that more so now than ever, I feel like are looking at certain industries, be it the automotive one with Tesla or telecommunications, something with like what OnePlus are doing with phones, and they're saying like there's a big hole here. This is very stupid. What's going on? Like, let's fix that. And
Mhm.
seeing people, all gather together and innovate for something that, for the longest time, has very much been like cemented, like things you would never think that like an electric car would be popular today, but it is. And yeah, I've got a lot more faith nowadays in terms of because I feel like so many things seem hard to break down. Like, how can you get electricity in, a remote part of Africa? But realistically, it's not really that hard. It's just we need more minds working on it.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I think tech just like it's moving so fast. So it has a lot of potential to be like changing things quickly as well.
Mm. Like for me, I come from a place where I've always believed that we could have solved so many life problems so much earlier had we just invested in the right people.
Mm.
Like someone told me once, as an example, imagine if the cure for cancer was he gave like a whole story that I can't remember like word for word, but it was along the lines of there's a kid somewhere that could have cured cancer 10 years ago, but it turns out he was in sub-Saharan Africa and never made it past the age of 5. And that stuck with
Yeah.
me till now because it's like there's literally I think I read like 10% of the world's population have 1% of the wealth or something, or like probably a bigger number than that. But it's like there are so many people out there that have so many skills and so much knowledge that we don't even appreciate purely because of, capitalism or, buying the latest iPhone or something.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's crazy. And that like as we're speaking, I Googled it earlier, like philanthropy and tech and and good. I noticed it's good for tech in Bristol as well. So that's
Really?
definitely
Huh.
yeah, that's definitely gonna be my next Chrome tab. I think the last thing that I can think of is your overall experience at uni so far.
Yeah. Just kind of like what I've thought about it.
Yeah, just like how have you found it? Your high points and low points.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say like I've really enjoyed my uni experience. I guess the low point would be like figuring out what exactly I want out of college and like where I want to be. So, of course, transferring universities across the country, having to start all over again as a transfer and then changing my major and stuff. All of that was kind of hard to decide upon, but I would definitely say that I've kind of found my place and it took me a while to find like a group of people that I felt that I really got along with. But I think I finally found those kinds of people. And as far as just like finding things that I like to do, I feel like California has been like a really great place for me because, tech is really interesting to me. There's a lot of really cool hiking places in California, West Coast in general. So yeah, I don't know. I'd say I'm pretty happy with what I've gotten to do um, throughout university.
That's great, man. Glad to hear you say it. What would you say are some individual highlights between your three experiences?
um, I would say that in Maine, it was just so different, and I thought it was kind of hard at the time, but I think that I grew a lot as far as a lot of the students there were from like Boston prep schools. And so like, someone from Southern Texas, so that was something I hadn't really experienced before, as well as seasons. Even though the winter was kind of long and dark, it was definitely like a beautiful fall with all the fall colors. And then, I've never been happier to see spring. Um, as far as like Bristol, yeah, I would say just like meeting all kinds of new people from all over the world. Maybe that was more just me being an exchange student, that I was around so many international students. But even just getting to really know people who are from the UK, I thought that was an extremely valuable experience. And then California, I don't know, I guess just like finding kind of like a maybe lifestyle and like set of people who kind of hold the same values as me and like want to do the same kinds of things as me. That's been really great.
I can see the benefits to that. I definitely think after seeing you come here and talking about it more, I'm a lot more interested in getting out more.
Yeah, yeah, no, I definitely strongly believe in like the value of experiences, like not even intentional experiences, but just doing things that are different from what you normally do. Even on like a neuroscience level, like when you do something new or learn something new, like your brain is actually changing. Um, and so I think you can like kind of become smarter through experiences in a very technical way.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And like even in terms of general learning, like I always say that we as humans have the ability to learn from other people's mistakes instead of actually having to do things yourselves. And
Hmm.
like how you mentioned mentorship before, reading, like all these things, just learning more, doing more, living more. You just can't go wrong.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Like even if you're failing or something, you're still learning.
Yeah, in some way. All right. I do want to ask actually. I know I'm again trying to steer clear of politics, but what's the 2020 climate like? Because obviously you can't go out and vote like this.
Yeah,
I know we have a couple months anyway, but
yeah, I think that it definitely is different this go around because the main focus is not on the election, it's on the, the virus and stuff. Um and I think it's I don't know, I feel like I have a distorted kind of perspective because like my family is liberal and then like all of the undergraduate colleges are generally pretty liberal. So I live kind of in a bubble as far as like what the overall climate in America is like. Um, if you look at the numbers, surprisingly, I think Trump has a pretty high approval rating relative to like what maybe you hear from the news and stuff like that.
mm,
Um, but I think that this upcoming election, will be more about like either you're on Trump's side or you just want anyone but him. Um, and so I guess it was kind of similar to the 2016 election. You either like really want Hillary or you really want Trump. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be interesting because I think they were pushing back or trying to push back some of the like regional elections and stuff. So to see how the virus influences that and like how politicians are kind of shaping their arguments for why they should be elected, it's gonna be interesting.
yeah, yeah. I would definitely vote in favor of the man who gives me 2 grand a month.
Oh no.
It's a good thing I'm not American.
Yeah.
Oh man. Right. That's basically all I have for you. It'll be great to have you on when you're working in California.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it'll be, I mean, if things go back to normal, whenever things go back to normal.
Yeah, literally. Just make sure you save me a room because I'll be there very soon.
Sounds good. Yeah, once like anyone can travel anywhere ever, then yeah.
Yeah, stay tuned for COVID 21.
Oh man.